I think that it highlighted the fact that collaboration is going to be very important to business. It's going to be very important to supply chain management, as well as, the continuous engagement with your peers, with your workforce, with your business partners within an organization, within and outside of the organization.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is the Digital Supply Chain Podcast, the #1 podcast focusing on the digitization of supply chain. And I'm your host, Global Vice President at SAP, Tom Raftery. Hi everyone, welcome to the Digital Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery with SAP. And I just wanted to start today's show with a little message that I got from a user on Instagram called Chai, C-H-A-I. And Chai wrote to me a direct message on Instagram saying, "Hi Tom, I just wanted to drop off a huge thanks to you and your podcast Digital Supply Chain series on Spotify." Obviously, Chai listens on Spotify, which is lovely. "I will begin my bachelor's following this September with a specialization in supply chain management and logistics, and having already listened to you, I've built up such a wonderful framework of the problems I want to work on. Thank you for your vision, effort, and time. You truly are making groundbreaking impact through this. I hope to learn more from you over time. Have a great day. Wishing you health and prosperity." Thanks so much for that, Chai. And that's absolutely a great segue into our first guest, because our first guest is Justin. Justin is from the educational world. So Justin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Thanks, Tom. I am Dr. Justin Goldston. I am a professor of project and supply chain management from Penn State University. And my primary research interests are centered around supply chain management, digital transformations, and organizational change. So I look forward to our discussion, and it's going to be engaging. I can already tell.
Thanks, Justin. Thank you so much for reaching out about coming on the show, because we've had a lot of executives on the show and supply chain professionals, but this is the first time we've had an educator. And I'm acutely aware that there's a section of Reddit dealing with supply chain who are very engaged and who do come and listen to this podcast as well. So it will be interesting, I think, not just for the professionals, but also for the number of students and young professionals on Reddit who listen to this podcast. As an academic, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Supply chains have had to respond to this. Some have responded better than others. What are your takeaways from what's happened in the last 5-6 months of this pandemic?
I will say that from an educational perspective, fortunately and unfortunately, there has been more notice in terms of the supply chain discipline. I've had a number of students reach out to me, undeclared students, general business students reach out to me, inquiring on how to transfer into the supply chain discipline. So, and I asked them, why supply chain? It's like, well, I've heard it on CNN, I've heard it on MSNBC, and it sounds interesting, and there's never a dull moment. And I said, that's supply chain. And so, and for those students where, their traditional operations management and supply chain management courses are a requirement within their undergraduate programs, they are finding more of an interest. They're finding more of a connection with the pandemic. I will say that the pandemic has triggered myself and my fellow researchers within higher education to reevaluate the curriculum. And make changes and include things such as uncertainty management planning, as opposed to risk management planning, in terms of project management and things like that. So the pandemic has uncovered a number of things. I mean, of course, it was uncovered a number of things within the industry, but it has within higher education as well. And now we see that, we can't look at supply chain management from a traditional sense, where you just talk about logistics, purchasing, forecasting. You have to take the current developments and apply them and make it more of a practice-based curriculum as opposed to a theory-based curriculum.
So for the uninitiated, or for me, what's the difference between uncertainty and risk when it comes to supply chain?
So I will say that, in a nutshell, I say that uncertainty is the current state, and I could say that the risk would be the future state, vision and planning. So that's essentially how I discuss it within the project management courses. In that, a lot of organizations, even professionals, kind of get those terms mixed up and commingled. And I try to stress the fact that uncertainty management planning is the current state, the pandemic state, and the risk management is a future state.
Okay, and what's going to have to happen to supply chains so that they can not just get through this, but be ready post-COVID, if we ever get there, to thrive and succeed and continue?
I think that, going back to your previous question, organizations are going to have those uncertainty management plans, and they're also going to have those risk management plans or strategies, because I say that supply chain disruptions are cyclical, in that although this is further amplified in what we're currently experiencing now, we have these every year, in the shape of earthquakes, in the shape of hurricanes, and workplace strikes around the world. And if we look at an uncertainty management plan, if we have a strike, how long is that strike going to last? And it can be translated to what we're experiencing now, in that, how long is this pandemic going to last?
Sure.
And we have to have a plan to alleviate the, what's the word I'm looking for? Alleviate the hit.
Yeah, sure. That works.
So I think that, the planning is, and it's project management planning, it's supply chain management planning, it's business strategy planning. The overall business strategy plans have been impacted by this. And I had a discussion with one of my peers, Louis Columbus, where he's a Forbes columnist.
I know Louis well.
And
lovely guy.
Yes. Amazing man.
Small world.
And we were talking about the developments, and he said that at the beginning of the year, he was saying that corporate social responsibility was going to be the hot topic.
Right.
And then once COVID hit, that CSR kind of took the back seat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. To things. So how does this pandemic affect an organization's CSR strategy, where it was a part of their 2020 plan? It goes CSR, it goes to diversity and inclusion, it goes to, a number of things, sustainable practices, creating efficient, reducing inventory level. I mean, it could be anything for an operation or an organization, organization strategic plan. So.
And, to that point, CSR, diversity and inclusion, all these kind of things have taken a back seat very much in the last few months. Should they? I mean, do they matter? And particularly in the middle of a pandemic, they have taken a hit. Will they come back?
I think they're going to come back. And I think that with the shelter in place mandates and with individuals networking with people they haven't previously, right? People working across the country, across the world, around the world,
yep.
And experiencing different cultures. I think that this is one of the silver linings that we're going to see from the pandemic, in that they will be able to empathize. They will be able to relate. There will be additional buy-in to that people aspect of CSR, and to the efforts in terms of diversity and inclusion. Because previously, because I've been working remotely since 2006, 2007, and there's been a lot of cases where we hop on Zoom calls, hop on Microsoft Teams, when we didn't have this video technology, and you heard the person's voice, but you didn't know what that person looked like.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You heard the accent, you made assumptions. but now you see that person's face, you hear their children in the background because they're homeschooling their kids, and took a break, to take the call that you're on and things like that. So I think that this is a positive outcome, and I think that there's going to be people will further embrace the CSR efforts, as well as the diversity and inclusion efforts once we emerge from this.
Okay. Interesting. Good. You also mentioned at the start that you're involved in teaching organizational development, if I heard correctly. That's an interesting one, given, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic and organizational development is going to be severely impacted by this. I mean, organizations are going to have to change. If you think in terms of supply chain, manufacturers, for example, will have to change their manufacturing lines. Even yourself as a university lecturer, you do a lot of remote lecturing now as opposed to in-person lecturing, and there's all kinds of other hits happening. How is this going to impact organizations? I mean, I can see in terms of manufacturers, they're going to have to increase automation to try and reduce the number of workers on lines to try and maintain social or physical distancing ordinances. There's all kinds of impacts like that. And for organizational development, it's going to be, there's that old refrain that technology is easy, people are hard. And I guess that's really what organizational development is all about. How are organizations going to develop post-COVID?
You hit the nail on the head in that technology. Next question, just kidding. So, but I think that we both come from, the ERP world, and, that is the, from an organizational change perspective, the people is the hard part.
Yep.
Whenever we look back on failed implementations, it is very, 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 very rarely been the solution itself. It's been the people, it's been the workforce embracing the project, it's been the leadership buy-in, and I think the same is going to hold true with this as we emerge out of the pandemic. And I think that it's just like ERP implementations. It starts with the why.
Okay.
The leaders of the organizations, the leaders themselves have to understand the why. Why did you call me in here? And I used to tell organizations, this ERP system is nothing but $1 million piece of code. You have to influence, you have to empower the workforce. You have to be that transformational leader, taking those theories you learned in business school and demonstrating them, walking the talk, if you will, and showing the people why are we embracing this technological change? How is this change going to positively impact you? Key term, positively impact you.
Yeah.
Right. And what's your role within this project? Because that getting the input from the workforce is how you're going to get that workforce buy-in.
Yeah, of course.
And time again, I'm sure you can attest to this, where we've sat in those conference rooms, done the requirements gathering, done what do you want out of this system, and the leaders have their opinions, but let's get the input of the workers. Let's do that gimbal walk and say, what can we do to make your job easier?
Yeah. What
would you want to see in a solution? You're the one going to be doing this on a day-to-day basis. All I'm doing is looking at the reports. But the biggest thing I've been speaking with people on in terms of organizational change and business transformations would be how this automation is not going to take away jobs.
That's a huge concern.
It's going to assist. It's going to make their jobs easier. It's going to make them more efficient.
Right.
And I think that that's going to be, that should be the emphasis for these new strategies. So RPA, or robotic process automation, business process automation, industrial automation, that needs to be the foundation. And that needs to be one of the first things, that is discussed by leaders, who implement these new solutions.
If I am a supply chain professional, I'm going to ask this question in two forms. Okay. Mm-hmm. So there's two parts to the question. If I'm a supply chain professional, what should what are the key things I need to be aware of for the next, 2-3 years, given that we are right now in the middle of a pandemic, but, hopefully in 2-3 years coming out of it. So A, for a supply chain professional, what should I be thinking of? And B, if I'm a student, either just starting into supply chain or just coming out of and starting into industry, same question, what 2-3 things should I have top of mind?
I would say for both both of those demographics, I would say you need to educate yourself in terms of the emerging technologies. You don't have to be an expert, but you need to have an understanding of technologies, because these technologies are going to be the competitive advantage of organizations. Okay.
And by emerging technologies, you're talking about AI, blockchain, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So ERP applications, are integrating artificial intelligence.
Yep.
And it is evolving by the day, by the week, in terms of the use cases, in terms of the algorithms that are being built. I just had I had the discussion with the class on Monday. Those algorithms are in a way struggling right now, in that there's no COVID algorithms, right? What do those COVID algorithms look like? What do the post-COVID algorithms look like? Uh-huh. I think that those emerging technologies, or the understanding of those emerging technologies, are going to be important. People say I'm biased, but that's my view on things. I think that with blockchain, I think it's going to take time for blockchain to catch on within the supply chain industry. There are some organizations using blockchain, but just as with cloud computing, it took cloud computing 10 years to catch on.
It's still only just catching on.
And now that's all the vendors are offering.
Yeah.
So blockchain is going to take I think it's going to take time to catch on. BPA, business process automation, I think is going to be continue to be integrated. I think that process intelligence, I think, will be emerging. Okay. In terms of your ERP application, tracking a process and essentially developing like a Visio diagram, right? Okay. On the back end. Uh-huh. So why is that important? Well, as the workforce that we have today continues to or begins to retire, reach retirement age. Yep. You're going to have a new wave of individuals coming into the organization. So a lot of companies that I've worked with do not really have those process maps. It's all in those tenured employees' heads.
Right.
But with this process intelligence, you're tracking those processes and those keystrokes, and you're kind of creating those diagrams on the back end, to better understand the process of the organization. I think that's something that's very early on in the process, but I foresee that somewhat picking up from an efficiency perspective and from a standardization perspective, because standardization is going to be very important. But to address the new college, the college students, mm-hmm. I think that another thing to consider are certifications.
Okay. So
a number of institutions offer certifications. I know Penn State offers certifications in SAP and ERP. Mm-hmm. So we have within the project and supply chain management program, you can take one more class as an elective outside of the curriculum, and you receive an ERP and SAP certification. Cool. And, I explained to them where that's a differentiator.
Yep.
I say that I am very candid with you all. And once you start in your senior year, you're getting in competition mode. You are going into competition with Michigan State. You're in competition with Arizona State. You're in competition with the University of Arkansas. University of Arkansas came out of nowhere in terms of supply chain education. They have built a machine down there. Oh. Yes. So that's what I explained. I try to equate everything to business in that, what's going to be, your differentiator. Mm-hmm. So I think that certifications are important for those college students. Certifications are important for professionals within the industry. Oh, yeah. But also in terms of those certifications, you have to have an understanding of where do you want to see yourself. So like you said, where do you see ourselves? Where do we see, this situation in the next 3 years? Where do you see your career in the next 3 years? That's going to kind of direct you in terms of like the APICS or ASCM, CSCP certification or the CPIM certification.
Sure.
So that's where, where we what I explain to professionals, what I explain to college students that's going to enter into the industry, where education is very important, but certifications within the supply chain industry
is very important.
Yeah,
very cool. Very cool. Justin, we've gone over the 20-minute mark, and I normally like to keep it somewhere between 20 to 30 minutes for the podcast. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think, I should have asked? Anything that you think it's important people be aware of that we've not mentioned?
I think that I want to highlight the point once again that there is a positive outcome to the pandemic, in that I think that it highlighted the fact that collaboration is going to be very important to business. It's going to be very important to supply chain management, as well as, the continuous engagement with your peers, with your workforce, with your business partners within an organization, within and outside of the organization. I say that because we had no choice, but to have that continuous communication. I would say almost all organizations kind of instituted those, town hall meetings, where the leaders, discuss the current state, of the organization, the current state of the world. But I think that should be a move forward approach, that a move forward cadence within an organization, because now, that's going to lead into increased trust within the organization and outside of the organization. So I want to just, highlight the fact that there is a a silver lining in this current situation.
Cool. Nice note to end on. Justin, if people want to know more about yourself or about the courses you teach or anything like that, where would you have me direct them?
So the best place to contact me would be on LinkedIn. Please reach out to me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content in terms of the supply chain practice, in terms of the project management practice. Also, what we're cooking up in the lab, I like to say, within higher education at Penn State, within the project and supply chain management program. Another thing I would like to add is that we are hosting a TEDx event where we're discussing supply chain management. We're discussing artificial intelligence. We're discussing diversity and inclusion. We're discussing women within industry. Sherry Heinisch, which is going to be a speaker within that event. So we have an absolutely amazing lineup for that event. Wow. So be on the lookout for that as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool. Justin, that has been fantastic. Thanks a million for coming on the show today.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your opportunity.
Okay, we've come to the end of the show. Thanks everyone for listening. If you'd like to know more about digital supply chains, head on over to sap.com/digital supply chain or simply drop me an email to tom.raftery@sap.com. If you like the show, please don't forget to subscribe to it in your podcast application of choice to get new episodes as soon as they're published. Also, please don't forget to rate and review the podcast. It really does help new people to find the show. Thanks. Catch you all next time.